to order at, I have 5:02 or 1, but anyway. Lady can see the clock better than I can. Here anyway. So we have a new board member. Welcome, and she's got something in her mouth. So I'll let you do that, but just do the prep. But anyway, introduce ourselves. We talk about where we're, from, and I'm going to add one more thing to it. Why do you like being on this board? And I'll start with Steve. Who's also got something to say. Yeah.
I like being on this board because you always call when your mouth is full.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Steve Warzak, ACSD representative and a vice chair and a resident of Middlebury.
Thank you.
Nicole McTavish, Superintendent and Director and resident of Middlebury.
Wendy Pratt, Assistant Director at the Career Center.
Laura Harthen, ACSD representative to the board. I live in Middlebury.
Welcome. Thank you.
I'm Jillian Zieger. I'm the curriculum director here.
Kim Farnham, I live in New Haven, and I'm the community at large member from the Mount Abraham School District.
I'm Christina Macklin. I'm from Ferrisburg, Addison Northwest School District representative.
Austin Haynes, I'm the business manager, and I'm Kim's neighbor in New Haven.
Yeah. Doesn't have me over yet. Vice versa.
Steve Fox from Middlebury at Large. And I like being on this board because I get randomly put on the spot.
Thank you.
Will Peterman, Middlebury Wib. I like knowing what's going on at the Career Center, and I like working for the town, doing what needs to be done.
My name is Michael Giorgio from ACSD, and I like being on the board because I've been involved with the Career Center for about 20 years and just really think it's a great asset to our community.
I'm Linda Barrett, clerk of the board, and it's a family tradition.
Judd Markowski, Workforce Investment Board member, resident of Bridport, and I like being on the board for way too many reasons to count right now. But mostly I have one kid who's here now and another one on the way who hopefully will be here. So I think it's a great place to be for a lot of people who want to be here.
Shannon?
Shannon Thurber, confidential executive administrative assistant to Nicole. I live in Bristol, and I'm not on the board, but I enjoy working at the school. I feel it's a huge part for kids to have that exposure and give them that leg up and to succeed in areas that they're unable to in normal schools.
And her son goes to school here.
Yeah, my son goes to the diesel program this year, second year.
I'm Jess Daniel. I'm the Work-Based Learning Coordinator here, and in a few minutes you'll learn more about me and what I do here.
Thank you. You may recognize her. She's somebody, if you ever adopted a dog in town at the Humane Society, that's who's there. Thank you. That's right. So, and many of us have through the years, or if not recently. Thank you.
We have Liz.
Liz, where is she? Liz, you
I'm
thank you.
Liz Sayre. I'm from Bristol, and I am lucky enough to be appointed by the MAUSD board to Hannaford, and I appreciate all that it does to connect our young people and our adults to the community and find gainful employment. So I really appreciate that. And how inclusive Hannaford is. They do a lot to work with everyone who wants to learn there, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Liz. I forgot to mention, my son's taken an adult ed course, a welding course, and it's the first time in, well, he's 29, that he likes what he's doing, and he likes going to school, and with the exception of last night, he was too tired, but has just been at this course and just every day, can't wait to come and do it again. So, and Dylan, who's teaching it, said, if you want to get certified, I can give you a path to do that. So, and it might be at Stafford or whatever, but I mean, it's a nice way for him to really get excited about something, because from K through 12, it was not pretty. Anyway, so again, That's my interest. But you didn't mention why you,
I know, I just completely spaced that out.
that's okay.
I think everybody said it all, honestly, but I've been on the board a long time, and just the way the center has grown and the way it supports students and the community and adults, it's just an amazing place, and that's why I like being on the board, so, yeah.
Thanks.
And my son went.
Yeah, there you go. The next piece is, I need a motion to approve the agenda in front of you.
So moved. Second.
And second, thank you. Any questions, delineations, changes? Seeing none, raise your hand or say aye. Aye. You approve?
Aye.
Anybody object to it? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Motion to approve. Linda, is it better if we do these separately, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so the minutes from February 20th and March 20th, and obviously there's a link there for the meeting minutes, but I need a motion to accept those.
So moved.
Thank you, Christine. Second?
Sure.
Judd? Thank you. And any questions, concerns, changes? Any omissions? All right, thank you. If you do approve, would you raise your hand or say aye?
Aye.
All right, anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Any public comments? Anybody online other than Liz? Seeing none, they have a question about the agenda or an item they'd like to address? Seeing none, we'll move on into the consent agenda. Monthly accounts payable. Austin, you want to speak to that? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so for the general fund, in our accounts payable check run, we had $276,408.93. Our payroll for the month of March was $204,995.51. In adult education, we spent $2,809.64. In our enterprise account, $5,850.98. And student activities was $3,127.15. There was no activity in our line of credit or any other accounts.
That are listed here.
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions, Ross?
Hey, quick question. We had, going back a few months, when we had to vote in a kind of an emergency line of credit because we hadn't had things come in.
Yep.
Did that go away now?
Great question. So that was paid off in full in January, and that was a temporary extension of our line. So that was paid off in full when we got our ed fund payments in January.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Steve?
I'm not sure if this is the place to bring it up again, but we had been working for a quarterly report on how we're doing in the accounts.
Okay.
Like how much we budgeted and how much of that had been spent through the quarters. And I know you guys were busy, and we said we would discuss that later. I don't know if it's later yet,
Yeah.
but I still want to keep it on the burner.
Great. Yeah, I think two things. The policy that we're looking at this evening has an accounting of our year-to-date spend through March. So that's a quarterly snapshot of our expenditures for the general fund. And then I think as far as the budget and policy conversation, that'd be a great place to dig into the year-to-date actuals for the different line items. But certainly happy to provide more information if the board requests it.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, concerns? I need a motion to accept the consent agenda and the report that was just given.
I move that we accept all the items on the consent agenda.
Steve?
Second.
And second from Bill. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. And on our agenda, we are way ahead of schedule. Anyway, for the moment, work-based learning presentation.
So, first of all, thanks for inviting me tonight, appreciate it. We're just gonna go backwards real quick. I'm gonna challenge me to go backwards.
It's glitching.
Oh, well, that was quick.
Thank you.
Wait, okay.
Yeah, it's telling me there's an error.
Can you open the link back up? Do it?
We got to schedule the thing that starts August.
Do the question, I should think,
Oh, we have one more meeting.
You guys had to jinx it by saying we were ahead of schedule, and everything was going fine.
But, yeah, she just texted me, I was like,
That's
yeah.
great.
She loves the company, she's
Well, a fun fact, in the slide that talks about me, I say that I'm obsessed with my dog, and so you can all get to know that this is her birthday, and she has already destroyed the toy we got at Hathaway about an hour.
What's her name?
Fresca. And she is an alum from Homer College.
Yeah, there you go. Fresca.
Fresca, yeah.
How old is Fresca?
She just turned 4. I had a little bit of insider knowledge when I adopted her and was able to find out her actual birth date. So I am lucky in that way, because when you adopt, you often wonder so much about where they came from and when they were born.
Oh, no, she's also in Jersey. That's what's nice about it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, she's interviewed 6 times, and didn't get the job. So this other company was downside, and so boom, they come. Yeah.
Sorry about that, no worries. So anyway, thanks for having me tonight. This has been my first year in the position, and it's kind of fun to share with you what I've learned about it over the course of the year. So a little bit about me, and that is the next slide. There's my girl, her name is Jessica, as I mentioned. I'm in the middle of getting my educator license through the AOE certification program. That'll be complete by the end of next year. I'm really grateful for the community that I found here. I didn't know anything about education or career tech ed when I started, and it's a really pretty incredible place to work, so I'm grateful for that. And you'll find us at Dunmore in the summer a lot. The next slide are just some of the things that I observed how WBL supports CTE in general. This probably isn't news to any of you, but I've seen it firsthand this year, and these are the things that have jumped out at me. Real-world experience, skill development. The student up there with the hospital mask on was actually in Homeward Bound surgery suite, observing and helping post-op patients. So skill development beyond what they might be able to do in the classroom. Awareness of PAC programs, and then engagement with area employers, both for students and as advisory board members. The next slide talks a little bit more about how it just supports Addison County in general, and again, not news to you guys, I'm sure, but all of these things that it helps support and enhance. We see a student working there at our PM Motors up in Virgins, yep, and then a student at Eye Care Associates, and then down at the bottom is the medical professions class doing their shadowing at Porter. So all of them already building ties with Addison County. The next slide is just a snapshot of numbers since I've been here. I wasn't able to make this a trend from last year because I didn't quite have the data that I wanted, but this is what I can work off of for next year. So just the number of partners we've been involved with, and that's employers and organizations in the county, the number of industries those partners represent, the number of students who have engaged in one way or another, eligible students. The way I came up with that is that I took the juniors and seniors and just calculated how many of them were participating. For a total of 702 hours, which has actually gone up quite a bit in April. We've had a really busy couple of weeks. And the number of programs that are involved in WBL so far are 7. So I'm looking forward to growing those for next year. And then the next few slides are just examples of work-based learning experiences that our students have had. Plant and factory tours, and so what you see here are Construction 1 students who went up to a job site in Killington. They did that in the fall. In the middle, you've got both the Diesel 1 and Auto 1 classes. We took a field trip up to Colchester to visit Saba Marine, which I think was a pretty interesting partnership. Nicole's the one that started it, because they reached out and said, you know, we have diesel technology in the marine industry too, and I think people don't think of Vermont as having a marine industry, but it's a pretty big one. Saba Marine has an internship program all designed and set up, and we actually have one of the students that was there that day is pursuing the internship for this summer and will be coming back here next year, so that's exciting. And then on the right is a tour that we took of the Agrimark plant right here in town, and that's the culinary class getting their initiation on hygiene and how to behave once they were in the plant. So, that was a lot of fun that day. The next slide is again more experiences, and what we have on the left is PC Construction came down, and I've never heard such a sales pitch to students in my life. They were talking to the Construction 1 class about the opportunities, the paths forward, the training, the paid schooling, the benefits, where these kids could see themselves in 20 years if they started now. And that was great. I think there is a trip planned to their job site. They are doing the Doubletree Hotel in Burlington, if you guys know that big job. I think they're gonna get up there with lots before the end of the year. In the middle slide is Mo Room, showing the culinary class how to make maple sugar, hands-on. So I think that was fun for them and definitely a good product. And then on the right is a student who's in the construction program, but she wanted to gain some experience with design because her interest in construction is secondary to her interest in design. She felt that it would be useful to her to know how things were built from the outside in before she started designing the insides, and I just find that really fascinating. So she's there at a local design store, and we're trying to get her connected with another local designer for this spring and next year. Sorry, I'm not saying what's on the top. These are the types of job shadows they are, but those are right there for you. The next slide, we have the medical professions student at Eye Care Associates. And then in the center slide again, I think that was her payment in kind for her job shadow, some paint. And then on the right, this is interesting. This is a student who's in our diesel tech program, but he's actually doing a co-op now at Randy's Auto in town. So he's kind of shifted a little bit out of diesel technology to auto technology. I'll see if he likes that better or where he goes from that. The next slide, internships. On the far left, we have 3 students from the I guess there's 2 in that picture, from the Sustainable Ag program, and they worked with the Champlain Valley Farmers Coalition to get some training in teaching, to teach a water quality unit to a third grade class out in Bridport. One of the students there is also in the Human Services program, and is working to apply for her associates at CCV, so that was kind of a double whammy for her, which is cool. In the center, we have a human service student preparing some Halloween crafts. And then on the right side is my office actually, and that's a digital design and illustration student who designed a internship with a woman who runs a local digital marketing firm. But what was kind of interesting about it is in the course of our first meeting to set up her internship, and when it actually started, the woman sold her house kind of abruptly and moved to Texas. So our student had to adapt, and they had to redesign the internship to work remotely. The culmination of this internship will be the woman coming back, because she's trying to do a bi-coastal sort of business now, and she and I and the student are going to go to the Chamber of Commerce mixer on May 15th, so the student can get a little bit of the entrepreneurship piece of solo, owning a solo business. I think there's a couple more. The next one, these are community support projects, and this was probably one of the bigger eye-openers for me coming here, is I really was not aware of the extent of things in our community that are designed by the kids here and put out there. The senior t-shirt, I stopped down at the clerk's office to get my dog registered, and saw those posters that had been made by Design and Illustration that were up there in the town clerk's office, and then of course the festival on the green shirts. And so right now we have a kid who's redesigning the logo for a local sandwich shop, and they're really out there doing a lot of the graphic work in our community, which I think is very cool. And then the last piece, I think the last slide here, is our co-ops, which are the sort of culmination of the work-based learning experiences where the kids are actually holding jobs that they attend both in and inside class hours and outside class hours that complement what they're learning. So on the left is a design and illustration student who has just got a job which will segue into past graduation and into their gap year at Little Press Room. In the middle is another senior, construction 2, and he's works for DCI Construction, and they were finishing up a job site there. And then on the far right again is a services student at a local child care center. So the next 2 slides are just the partners that we've worked with in all kinds of ways. Some are co-op employers, some have hosted job shadows, some have come here to speak to students. I think there's other examples. Most of those up there are co-ops or I think hoping to become co-ops. And then more here. We were just at Stark Mountain Woodworking today with the construction students and the industrial design and fabrication students, and it was pretty cool because Stark Mountain Woodworking, I wasn't aware of this, but they are like a Finnish cabinetry woodworking shop, but they use all the high-tech stuff. So they had CNC machines all throughout their place, and they milled their own lumber, and it was a really kind of an eye-opener for these kids about what you can do in construction. So I think that is it for our slides, our partners, and then that's me. So any questions, I'm happy to answer. If I can't answer them, I'll defer to Wendy or Nicole over here.
Any questions from anybody?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, I don't know if this is something that would be exclusive to the work-based learning, but there are a lot of local businesses that support a lot of the things that we do here. Is there any energy around putting together a list of those, or maybe something like we could use as a shopping list to patronize those businesses and tell them that you support us, so we're going to support you, and maybe do something around that for community outreach. So.
I'm keeping a list of agencies and employers that we're working with and that we might work with. I'm also planning to attend the job fair at the rec center in a few weeks, and I think I'm certainly going to have business cards there. Whether it's a interactive thing, I'm not sure. That's my wheelhouse, but I think collecting the names and contacts of as many businesses in the community as we can help for a lot of reasons.
Well, Steve, on that note, maybe we can, when we put something in the Artist Independent, one of the articles could be, by the way, here's the following list of, employers in the area that we work with, and, a little explanation of how that it's through the internship program, so that you get that real life job-oriented experience, so that, again, for recruiting, because like you said, there's a lot of parents who don't understand the depth of
Yeah, they don't.
what they go through here.
I am one of those parents. I was one of those parents up until this year, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we've had earlier visitation now, we had the 8th graders come in, and I had this conversation with a parent today, and she said, well, my daughter wants to do culinary, and she wants to wait a little bit, but at the same time, how early could she get in? Mm-hmm. And I was thrilled to hear that somebody is already making up their mind like that at 8th grade, so. Anyway.
So, I was talking to somebody today, they said, boy, we're really looking for someone who's taking welding. And do we direct people like that to you?
You certainly can, yeah. You can
Okay.
absolutely direct them to me, and then I can reach out to the instructor and share the interest or the need, and then they will, in my experience thus far, will kind of think through their students. So partnerships come to me that way. Sometimes somebody mentions it to the instructor or staff person here, and it makes its way to me there. But yeah, absolutely, you can, any sort of employer partner thing that you think might be appropriate, send it my way, and I can explore it.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
So maybe you said this earlier, but what's the percentage of our, full-time students that are participating in work-based learning situations, and what are the goals for the coming year?
I had calculated it as 33%.
Okay.
And that calculation, and I am not Austin, I'm not I'm not an incredibly super precise numbers person, but what I did was take all of the 11th and 12th graders that are here, and then took the number of them that are participating in experiences and divided it to get that 33%.
So do
overall,
you know what that number is? Is it like 30 kids? Is it?
oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that slide said. I think it said
66, I think is what it said.
60. That number was in here somewhere, I just didn't think. Second page, maybe.
65?
66.
66, okay, good.
Yeah, so
Thank
that's
you.
the number of kids that I was doing,
Okay.
yeah.
Great.
And how that is on a goal trend, I don't know exactly, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm gonna use for baseline.
Great, okay, thank you.
And I think if we do publish it, then it gives other businesses in the area to say, ooh, great, I'd like to do that, or can you send somebody down to the Subaru, group down in New Haven or wherever they need to, find help, because I know the signs are out all over the place.
They are out all over the place, and a lot of, largely in the auto industry, employers have reached out to me directly or to
Right.
instructors and said, please let us know. That's how Xavier ended up at
And that's a really good piece to add to it. By the way, are you looking for people, or the internship in the summer? I know a lot of people in construction are like desperate to have somebody there from that ground level, Bill?
Do you also organize like the open house that was up at North Campus a couple weeks ago?
No, that was the instructors. I was there, but that was the instructors who completely pulled that together, yeah.
So that was well attended.
Yeah, it was, that was good then.
Anything else? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, we have to have an action on this, but if you would take a couple minutes to talk about maybe your background and, you mentioned children or whatever.
Yep. So my name's Laura Harthan. I am a resident of Middlebury. I'm on the ACSD board. I have 2 children, one of whom is 4 years old, not quite in the school system yet, and the other one who's a 5th grader at Mary Hogan.
Nice.
My husband works at the middle school. He's a music teacher. And I work right now I'm doing product support for a company that makes feed formulation software. So I work in the agriculture industry. Before that, I was doing on-farm sales and formulation for a local feed company. So I've been kind of all over New England, traveling to farms. And I still do feed a handful of farms just to keep enough to keep my hand in it and to still enjoy it, and not enough to be frustrated by it.
Right.
I actually had a student who rode along with me a couple of years ago through the same program. And my mother works for a school district as a transportation director. My dad builds fire trucks for a living. So all of the trucks in Cornwall he's built.
Cool.
Some in Bristol, some kind of all over the place in Addison County. They live in New Hampshire, but so my brother did technical education when he was in high school. That was his path to productive adult.
What's he doing now?
Right now he works for a company called Creari in Hanover, New Hampshire. I think it's either Hanover or Lebanon. He's a technician, so the engineers give him the plan and he says, no, I can't build that, or yes, I can.
Yes, I can, yeah.
And then he does that. We don't know exactly what he does because there's a lot of DOD stuff, so he can't quite share everything, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say that usually is the case, they can't tell you.
Yeah, but he actually did graphic design as
Oh, awesome.
his technical program, but
Any questions? Welcome. Thank you for stepping up. I think you'll enjoy this board.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's very kind, respectful, what else? Anyway, we try, but and have been a lot of us on other boards to come in here, which I think is helpful. And if you have any questions, no question is ridiculous. Feel free. Nicole, Wendy, anybody's door when you come in that front, Shannon, whatever you need, we'll hopefully direct you in the right.
Everybody's been fantastic so far.
Okay. And I understand you already had a tour and you did all of that.
Yeah, I haven't been to North Campus yet. I'm hoping
Okay.
to do that sometime soonish, but
I see the baby goats.
Yeah.
I grew up with goats, so baby goats are the best type of goats.
They're what, a month old?
Oh, no, a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah? How many now?
Four
Four?
babies.
Ooh, good.
Great movie, by the way.
We're actually going out of town for break, and on the way to South Carolina, we're stopping at a friend of mine's house who, she's an ag ed teacher out in New York.
Cool.
She has a goat dairy that she's starting, so she's got like 100
I was gonna say.
little critters, and I'm
Right.
very much looking forward to that.
There we go. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much. So next is the action item. We have to, I'm not sure if we have to accept Laura's appointment. I don't recall ever doing that in the past, but as an action item, but thank you for doing that. And I have a pile of contracts that I will be signing. And I guess I have to put action on that, or motion to say that I am going to sign them. I have had accepted their contracts as written, so I've got through some of them, but I do have to sign them. So I need a motion to accept this pile of contracts in here. No people that are leaving us at this point, but obviously everybody who's accepted the commitment to be here are in the folder. So I need a motion to accept these contracts for the next school year.
I'll move that.
Good, thank you.
Second?
Second from Bill. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much, and motion passes. Thank you, Lynn. Next, action items, the ends report.
So I'm here to present the first one. I'm Jillian Seeger, the curriculum director, and if you flip through the pile past the work-based learning packet, where does it come up? It comes up right after the name position FTE paper, policy type ends 1.0. So this policy report really speaks to the learning and the curriculum over the course of this school year. The first accountability measure was students' competency in academic skills, particularly science, math, reading, and writing. And so in order to support this strand, I really looked at our most objective data, which is our work keys testing. So students here take the ACT work keys test in October and right now in April, and it tests math through applied math, which is sort of workplace math, and workplace documents, which is a language arts test that really is reading comprehension and understanding of work-related documents. And so the data that I have is from the fall, October administration of work keys, because they are just in the midst of taking it right now. The test is scored from 1, or essentially less than 3 to 7. 5 is considered proficient, and we had 42.37% of students at proficient, which exceeded our negotiated target of 39.86%. So with the state, we negotiate expected targets on these, and that was our expected target for this year. We'll need to look at the data that's coming in from right now, the April administration as well, and get the big picture for the entire year. But just based on the first administration of the test, we exceeded it. And then 46.42% of students were proficient in math. The negotiated target was 45.39%. So again, we exceeded that target. We are happy to have exceeded our targets, but we do want to increase our scores. We are sort of in the point of a big sort of deep dive into data and trying to get some historical information and more data to support what our students are doing well and areas they have for growth. And we're going to be having a really substantial objective next year to dive into the curriculum that we have and find ways to grow these scores and increase by embedding into our curriculum more opportunities for literacy and math competency. One other element, science. So this is sort of an interesting accountability measure because The tech centers don't administer a science assessment. Vermont gives the Vermont State Science Assessment to all 11th graders, and we are given our scores, but we don't give the test, the sending schools do. Nevertheless, we had as part of our accountability measures, a negotiated target of 18.03%, and we passed it at a rate of 33.57%. So we did exceed that target, but again, I'm going to try to find out a little bit more about what is on that test and see how it does or doesn't align with our curriculum.
Can I ask you a question about that? Why is that negotiated pass rate so low?
That's a good question.
I mean, 18% is
It's
not very-
because they just started with this test, so
Oh.
last year was a pilot, or actually the year before was a pilot year, and the state did not do well at all as
Okay.
a state. So I believe that's why, and they put a bunch of assessment questions out there to sort of learn from, and they adjusted the test some, but yeah, it did not go over well.
Okay.
this
And
new
here's
test.
another random question. Who is negotiating the pass rate? Like, what does that mean?
The Agency of Education.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
quite
With who?
literally, they get on a Zoom with
Uh-huh.
Ruth Durkee at AOE, gets on a Zoom with Wendy and I, and she says to us, what do you think your rate should have to be this year? And we say, well, based on this piece of data and that piece of data and the students that we've accepted and this IEPs and all of this, we suggest something. And then either AOE accepts it or they don't, and you go negotiate till you
Okay.
arrive at a number, and then that becomes our number for the year. And each year it does need to get higher, so
Okay.
you'll see a trend. The longer you stay on board, the more you'll see this trend.
Yeah.
And then each year we strive to meet the goal that we've negotiated.
Okay, so they're negotiating that pass rate with each individual CTE. There's no standard? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There probably is a window, I bet, but,
It's a very unique process.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what's
I
interesting
mean, compared to
is
what the regular high schools have to.
we're also never having the same cohort, right? So by
Right.
the time we are
Yep.
negotiating right now, it's with a different cohort.
Yeah.
So that's just interesting.
Yep.
And right now, we're receiving our performance accountability. This relates to our Perkins performance accountability from a year ago. So it's difficult because we're testing now with this population of students, and we're receiving information that we want to use meaningfully, but it's over a year old at this point, so.
Right, so you're not comparing what a student group did in the fall
Exactly.
versus the spring. It's
Yeah.
a year,
Which
a
is
different
problematic statistically speaking,
Yes,
but
it
it's
is.
what we have to work with, for
And
sure.
it- yeah, it's even further complicated by we're using a year-old data, and everything about it has changed, right? We have a completely different group of kids.
Yeah.
And also the data is over a year old, right?
Thanks.
So,
One quick question for you, Jillian. I had lunch a few weeks ago with a teacher who taught my kids, who's actually running an alternative school, but he's got a bunch of kids in the alternative school that all have IEPs, and he's trying to understand what his kids have to have, because he's got a couple of them who really want to come here. Are you the person they would talk to?
well, no, not necessarily, but I want to back that up and say, I would encourage this person that his or her students can come here, and that there is not some sort of benchmark in terms of academic proficiency that they're not likely to meet. The admissions process is blind and is legally blind to IEPs, so we can't know when they apply if they are on a plan, and we need to accept them without knowing that information, and then try to find out whether they are able to be successful in the program once that's revealed after the fact. Does that sort of answer your question or not really?
Kind of. His question was more of, he wants his kids prepared for the curriculum that's here so that they can actually do stuff. And that's why, you know, I said, oh, geez, I probably ought to ask somebody, you know, who would they talk to?
Well, that would be me. If they want to see what is likely to be taught in a given program, what the expectations are, you would start with me and then probably the instructor.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the second indicator is on our competency in technical skills and knowledge. And in order to support that, I gathered our data from this year, which is really encouraging. All 103 seniors are on track to graduate. 60% of our students are earning at least one Tier 2 industry recognized credential. Those are the higher level sought after credentials. 50% of our students are on track to receive college credit in the dual enrollment courses they're enrolled in. 33%, as you heard from Jess, are participating in work-based learning. 45% of our students are concentrators, meaning they are completing the second year of the program. And all of these percentages exceed our negotiated FY25 targets. Any questions on that one before we look at number 3? The third indicator is on social emotional communication skills, and this one I supported through our habits of work. So at PAC, we look at students' habits of work, their collaboration, respect, empathy, resilience, safety, work ethic, and responsibility, which are assessed as separate from their academic grade, but provide instructors an opportunity to build workplace readiness and social emotional skills and to give students feedback on the same. And when habits of work are graded on our same proficiency scale of 1 to 4, and on our proficiency scale, 3 is proficient, and a projected final average habits of work score across all students from all programs is a 3.3, suggesting that we are doing well in the area of preparing students with the sometimes called soft skills for work-life readiness. Numbers 4 and 5 really speak to our smaller but also important population of adult learners. Number 4, that they'll have the qualifications, skills, and abilities to either advance in their career or make a career transition. So we had quite a catalog of adult classes available, which you will see listed that year, and all of those courses allow our adult students to earn either a professional certificate, a professional license, or at very least a program completion certificate. And then we also have available from the website the Ed2Go online platform, which is really more of a clearinghouse of online opportunities that adult students can sign up for that go beyond what we have the instructors to offer here, such as health, business, computers, and art. And then relatedly, number 5 is that these programs remain affordable to adults. And from our folks who work particularly with adult ed here, I was able to confirm that there are quite a number of funding opportunities for adult ed students. The following organizations offer scholarships, the majority of them through VSAC, but also Vermont Hireability, private scholarships. Some adult employees, workplaces will sponsor their taking of a program, Department of Labor, and not to forget about the large $100,000 U.S. Department of Labor grant in partnership with Collins Aerospace made these programs affordable for our adult students.
Can I add one more? The Porter Hospital Auxiliary has scholarships available, so if the participants from the L&A program or anything want to go on and do the RN thing,
Yeah,
they can approach them and they will help them with that financially.
excellent.
And obviously, the payback is to work there.
Right,
But,
for a
you know,
while,
But that's
hopefully.
why they thought they would do that, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense for both parties. The last question asked about demonstrating workplace readiness, which seems to really have been addressed through numbers 2 and 4, so I just wrote C numbers 2 and 4, but I'm happy to elaborate on that or any of the other questions if there
I
are
have a
any.
quick question. Are the adult ed classes, were they pretty much fully enrolled this year, all of these classes you've listed here, or?
I don't know to capacity, but all of those programs did run
Did run.
with enough people to run the programs.
Okay, thank you.
And replacing people. I had blood drawn last week by a woman who took the phlebotomy class this spring.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And it was at the hospital, it wasn't just on the street.
Oh, that would have been a little questionable. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Financial conditions and activities. I'm assuming that's you.
Yep, that one's mine. So this is a quarterly snapshot. We looked at it a few months ago. And I'm happy to summarize unless the board would prefer going through each line item, but what's your take, Kim? High-level talking points or go through each?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if they have questions, obviously.
Great, yeah, so the first takeaway is we're about 3/4 of the way through spending in our general fund. So of our $5.3 million budget, approximately, we're just shy of $4 million. A large chunk of the remaining to be spent is encumbered either through payroll or AP purchase requisitions. So realistically, we have the remainder as of the end of March was in the $60,000 ballpark. As David and I are going through kind of a cleanup procedure, getting ready for the next fiscal year end, we're able to look at encumbrances more critically and free up some capital. So realistically, that number may climb once we get out of the month of March as far as tying out the quarter. The next stretch talks about using our line of credit. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we haven't needed to pull any reserves for expenditures on our line since January. And we don't anticipate at the present moment needing to until next fiscal year, which is pretty typical. The next large topic is with respect to interfund accounting and shifting of expenditures. And the largest interfund activity that we see on a typical basis is to cover our HRA and HSA expenses for medical. So through the month of March, we were just over $102,000 year to date for HRA and HSA expenses for this fiscal year. And then the last big takeaway is towards the end, I talked a little bit about our receivables. The last tuition payment we just received from the town of Lincoln for $106,000, and our final payment from the AOE is expected to come in the next few weeks, just over $513,000. And that should bring us out to the end of the receivables. Any questions on any of those topics, or Ken?
The audit status,
Oh, yeah,
Thank
this doesn't really touch on the audit, but I'm happy to.
just
go
for an
on a
update.
tangent.
Yeah, sure.
So as of now, our biggest project that we're working on to finalize the audit is our capital asset listing. And so as part of their routine testing, they've asked us to provide information about our entire inventory, our buildings, our vehicles, our equipment. And so we're still going through that project, which is hopefully the culmination of the audit. Yeah, we don't have a clear sense as to when the exact date will be, but we're hopeful this spring we'll have the final audit ready. So we'll see, fingers crossed.
Getting closer. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? Steve?
Yeah, so it looks like, according to what you've been reporting, it looks like all the accounts payable are caught up.
All of the accounts payable. Which number are you looking at?
Well, several places it mentions accounts payable in here.
Is the question, are we caught up with accounts payable?
Yes, I guess is the, because
I mean, every month we have a new payable that comes in on a daily basis. We have payables that come in, so I'm not sure which payables you're referring to?
Earlier, there was a backlog
Oh,
of accounts payable. Has that backlog been flushed out?
With vendors, we're caught up, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, I was misunderstanding your question.
I have a question, Austin.
Sure.
So based on these projections of expenditures and revenues, can you tell yet, how close, is there going to be a surplus, a deficit, what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we're legally not allowed to have a deficit, so
Okay.
we're still well within the ballpark of having a surplus. I think this year is tight. Obviously, in item number 1, I did mention the encumbrances, and a large part of that is.
It doesn't look like it's very much. Yeah.
No, I mean, and typically, and that's,
what I was wondering.
as I mentioned too, that's as of through the end of March. And we are looking at encumbrances that are on the books, and there might be duplicate POs that can be voided out. And as part of the accounting cleanup that David and I have been doing the past few months, there are some entries that we can look into and try to free up expenses that might be double entered or just not accurate. And we are finding that over time. So I do think in a typical year, 3 to 5% of your budget as far as an underspend is healthy. This is, in the 1 to 3% realm, which is a bit tight, so.
I know in our district, that this is about the time of year where our business manager is looking closer because do you need to let everybody know you can't spend any more money or, so.
Yeah, and as far as timing goes, we have another few weeks until we start shutting down spending
Okay.
altogether,
Very good.
at least in the general fund.
Thank you.
Austin,
Yeah.
Austin, are we all caught up with back issues with the IRS?
As far as delinquent tax payments, yes. I mean, so we're moving on a quarterly basis for reporting, and we're caught up now. There was a bit of a delay when we started as far as taxes that we owed for last year. So we made those payments in January to get caught up as far as outstanding reporting.
Any penalty issues?
There were, but relatively minor in the overall scheme of the obligation.
Thank you for all you guys did.
Yeah, it's it
Great
hasn't-
fire drill.
Yeah, it wasn't fun, especially when you're getting notices from the IRS. But thankfully we're back on a more routine processing. We do send payments every 2 weeks with payroll, and the quarterly reports are due at the end of each quarter, which we're now moving on. And that was the biggest challenge or hang up in the past, is there were several quarters that just weren't reported out. We were making payments, and some of those payments were not accurate, so that confounded the issue. But in January, we were able to get caught up in any delinquent payments or notices that we owed the IRS.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Seeing none. Let's move on to the exception to policy 2.7.
That is me, so I am going to request the board give me an exception to policy. We have an executive limitation policy, number 2.7, which states that I will not offer multi-year contracts to employees, and I am going to request that the board give me an exception to this policy for the purposes of a multi-year contract for the assistant director. I think given where we are in the state of education at this moment, I am working very hard to plan for the continuity of the district in whatever shape or form that takes. We will probably not be a district in 5 years, I bet, but we will be something, either a CTE center, part of a larger CTE district, or a CTE center, part of a larger school district or something. And I have a strong interest in maintaining all of the progress we've been making on finances, on curriculum, on enrollment, on program quality, on purchasing advanced equipment to keep up with the industry, all of those things. And to do that, it's very important to have a succession plan, which is another INS policy that we have, that I have a succession plan for myself. my succession plan is windy. And the other thing which I have experienced firsthand is when there's uncertainty in the context that you're working in, you often lose really good people because they seek more certainty, especially when they're a single earner in a family and really need to be careful. So I am hopeful that the board will grant me an exception to policy to offer Wendy a 3-year contract.
Judd?
Do we need to make a motion first before we ask questions?
No.
Okay. Have you checked with legal and whatnot to make it all?
I checked with legal and the state of Vermont, it's not as common here as it is other places. This is what you do in other places. It is legal in Vermont, it's just not done very often because Vermont feels very strongly about being a right-to-work state. So it is legal, but not prolific.
The other piece is to the looks of what is going on. If we solidify certain contracts prior to May 1st,
May 1st, yes.
May 1st, those will supersede maybe any action. We don't know, but clearly some of the legislation that's come down states that if we take care of that ahead of time, then it's kind of written in stone.
Right, we anticipate that part of whatever ends up happening with the legislation that's going on now, and I'll talk more about that as we move forward, but that there's probably going to be a prohibition on multi-year contracts as we get into the weeds of doing whatever's going to happen. And for me, I want to make sure that we have continuity with the district.
Any other questions? I'm going to try and take all of this action items at the end and have one motion, because it is in a grouping. Any questions for Nicole regarding that 2.7? It's in your packet. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to do that. So you're asking specifically for a change.
I'm asking, right, for an exception to policy 2.7 ends report to allow an exception for a single employee to have a 3-year contract.
Okay, so let's take that one out of this group. And Judd, are you willing to make that motion? Thank you.
I'd like to move that we allow the superintendent to make an exception and offer a multi-year contract to the assistant director.
Second.
Any other questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none? So moved. Thank you. And there was a letter in your packet regarding a second plate finish donation of $750 from Heritage. Guys did a great job. They came in, second? The stuff they won. Whoa.
I tell you what, our auto and diesel kids essentially swept their categories at the states. We won first, second, and third place in diesel for the state, and similarly placed in auto. We're just so proud of those teachers and those kids and everything they're accomplishing.
Excellent. So that's a donation to the whole center, or to the automotive group, I would say, for $750. Thank you.
Is it too much to ask you one first, Bill?
You know, off the top of your head. It was in the board report.
Oh.
I don't remember the
Yeah,
name.
this particular one wasn't Skills USA. This is Heritage Board, a different.
It was a different.
Did their own competition.
Yeah, and I don't know out of that school who came in first.
Yeah, and it looks like they had to take a test first, and then that narrowed it down to only, 6 competing, I think, in the actual, diagnostic piece of competition, which is where they came in second, which is
It's really cool to watch
good
these
skill.
kids.
Good skill set.
It's pretty impressive.
So, looking at the board committees and meeting dates, those are published. If you don't know when you're supposed to be there, or whatever, or you can't make it, it's really important you let people know. If you're in a position where you're running those committees, that meeting has to be warned ahead of time, so it isn't something you just casually walk in. And there's also an agenda that needs to be put together prior to the meeting. That's state law. So really, it's helpful if we have that ahead of time, especially for Shannon. How many hours ahead do you have to have it?
Minimum
72.
48 hours.
All right, to post it.
We generally try to post them at least 3 or 4 days ahead of time, but we can post them up to 30 hours.
If you're having trouble getting together, give a call over here, and it can be, there's a lot of help here in trying to set it up, or what was done in the past, or who's on the committee still, and so on. Or there are specific items that, in conversation with Nicole and Wendy about what are the priorities of, say, facilities, what's going on now. I think those are pieces that, it's really helpful. It's not particularly difficult, but it has to be done ahead of time. I think that's the biggest thing. That can't be last minute, can't have the meeting. So, and there's always things going on, whether it's an update from Alan or Wendy or Nicole, just to see what's happening within the building, especially, as I said, with facilities. The only one that we've put out for a sunset is the norms committee. Because they kind of accomplished their job set early on, but everything else, I don't know if you've been asked, Laura, to be on any particular committee yet, or
I was just going to address that.
Go ahead, Steve.
Laura is on the policy committee at ACSD, and she has asked if she could be on the policy committee. The situation it creates is that we would now have 4 members on the policy committee, meaning that we have to have 3 there for a quorum. Before it was 2. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that. And we had requested that we change our meeting time to 4:30. In our reorganization meeting, we would like to move that back to the original 4 because the person who was on the policy committee where that was a conflict has left the committee. So since it was reorganization, I didn't know if that needed to come before the board, or did we just need to say this is...
Within the group, I think, it's up to
Yeah.
you guys to decide,
Yes, so...
and that works.
We have to rewarn it, which is fine. We just wanted to make sure that that the board was okay before we did that.
And we try, just for your information, we try and do the things on Thursdays of the month, so, in that respect, it keeps it kind of in your head if you haven't written it down, what's going on. Jed?
I see that the next facilities committee meeting is next Thursday, the 4th Thursday, and there will be school vacation. What's the protocol on school breaks? Do we still have a committee?
Didn't we decide to do that a month from now? I thought we moved that for a month.
Great.
Generally, we cancel those meetings when we have a school break.
Great.
And on the next page in your
There's
packet
a list.
is when they are, and if it's not on,
Oh, perfect.
there's a little asterisk of,
And this past year, there was a couple that fell on vacations and holidays, so that unfortunately didn't happen. We've double checked this next year's and to make sure they're not falling on holidays or vacations, and if they are, they have the asterisk, just so you know that it was shifted the week before.
Great, thank you.
So board meetings on that list too?
There is a sheet.
next.
The next
The
one.
next one.
The next sheet, thank you. So take a look at that, hang them up wherever you need to hang them up, and go from there.
I will not be at the next board meeting, and I will not have anything with me that will put me on the meeting.
We will miss you.
I want to make sure I can get back in the country.
Think they'll let you back in?
I'll have to take my phone with me.
Take all your IDs, how many you got? Anyway, so one of the items in reference to facilities, the company that did most of the work, or subbed it out for the addition and the renovations, have a plaque that was put together, and I believe it is in the packet. If you want to take a look at it, we had to send it back once already because somebody's name was wrong. But
We went back through the minutes, and what we have here are the people who at that time indicated they wanted to be on the plaque.
Right.
But we wanted to make sure this was still correct, and that we, like a 4th check to make sure we spelled everybody's name wrong. Right.
But anyway, and
We better get it up soon, because there's nobody there who works here anymore.
Look at the board.
If you look at the board,
there's a few of us here. Anyway,
not many.
what location? Was that a decision that was even talked about? I mean,
Well, we haven't decided yet. Usually you put them sort of on the outside of the
Right.
building, but ours is kind of a strange,
Yeah.
we have to figure something out.
entryway?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
So you can look through it.
exactly, yeah.
Okay. come by, visit 20 years from now, you know, or in the front lobby, I guess. But anyway, so that's what that's there for. And I don't see any opposition to any change that needs this final run-through, but thanks for doing all that. I know we checked it a couple times, but we just wanted to, what Nicole said was, we had somebody who was like new and didn't really participate in any of that and just said, no, I don't really want to be on there. So we tried to get the people that had spent the most time with facilities and just time on the board.
We had a really key person left the board before we approved the plaque, and so it seemed kind of unfair not to have that person's name on the plaque. So.
It's important, to get the right input for that. Policy B5. Anybody want to address that?
I think that's me, right?
I was gonna say, I think that's you, Christine.
You.
I'm not sure it's an action item though, because this is the first read.
Yeah, me either.
It's the first read.
First
Do
read.
First read.
okay.
Yeah,
So
so
first read.
just
Thank you.
FYI, we're not going to be voting on this, or you all will not be voting on this tonight. So please take a look at it at your leisure tonight, and for the second read, which is when we will be voting on it, the strike-throughs, so we do have this policy, and the VSBA has updated it. The red strikeouts are our existing policy. The blue is the new language that the VSBA has added, and anything you see in black ink is, as it was. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's changed quite substantially. However, I will just, as you all are probably aware, the VSBA vets these policies against, with lawyers and the statutes and so forth. So typically when these things change substantially like this, the statutes have changed in some way or another, which are all referenced at the bottom of the policy. And this policy was updated by them on 10/10 of '23. And this was first adopted, we first adopted all these policies in 2020.
What do they have against verbal, written, or physical?
Don't know, that all came out though.
So is there a link to this?
Right in the agenda.
Is it in an editor?
It's
Is
in
it
a,
colored?
what's that?
I'm just asking if it's colored as well.
No, I put this together.
Oh, okay.
I took our original policy, I took the VSBA policy, I merged them all together and color-coded it for all of you to see. So
Thank you very much.
So you could recognize what's new and what's old and what's coming out.
Laura, are these changes just the VSBA changes?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not really allowed to if we made substantial changes to these things, we'd have to get our lawyer to look at them.
Yeah, just,
Yeah,
know that.
so,
And they've already had their lawyer look at it this way.
correct.
Okay.
And as you can see, we're a little, this was done in 2023, so we're in 2025, so we're behind.
What else is good?
There's a couple of, if you notice, this is the employee harassment policy. We just recently did the student harassment policy, so a lot of those are similar. One of the things that we ran across in the student policy was it had named people. If you were concerned about that, it had named people instead of offices. And the problem with the policy was that all three people that were named in the policy were no longer employees, so it led to an awkward situation. So Christina set this up for designated persons to say non-discrimination coordinator or the principal, and the non-discrimination coordinator is the assistant director, so there is not a name in there, there's a position in there. That's not VSBA.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
that would be adjusted for every school district. Right.
Thank you for all that work.
You bet, yeah, so I think the plan for the second read, then we vote on it, so the next board meeting, it would be an action item.
So there'll be no action on that. Please dissect it, whatever you have to do. If they have any questions, they should direct them to you. Does that make sense?
I guess so, hopefully I can answer them. I'm no
If not-
lawyer, but,
Try.
yeah.
And once again, kudos to Christina, because this is a lot of work, especially since the VSBA does not redline these.
Just
No, they
change it.
don't.
Yeah, so, and you see how long this policy is, that's a lot of work.
It was a long policy, yeah, yeah. Google Docs is not my fave either, but I did it.
Better than I.
Persevered.
You're not alone.
So I'm gonna need action on the following items in this part of the agenda. 1, number 2, number 4, 3 we already voted on, this is a reminder. Number 5, which are the meeting dates for committees, and number 6, which are the board meeting dates, and number 7, which is the approval of the plaque. Have a motion to accept those? Steve, second?
Yeah, I'll make that motion, but as I pointed out in number 5 about the committees and the meeting dates, we do have a member of the policy committee that is not on that list, so could we amend that to add Laura to that
Oh,
list?
yeah, we have to appoint.
Sure.
So,
Lisa, you want a committee? Thank you. All right. So the amendment on the floor is to add Laura to the policy committee. I need a second on that. That's Judge. Any questions about that? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
aye.
Okay, and again, you're voting on the amendment. Anybody opposed? Thank you, Liz. Nobody opposed? Congratulations. Get ready. Anyway, because they got a lot to catch up, unfortunately, but anyway.
And now back to the main motion.
Yes, and who would like to make that motion, please?
I would like to, that we accept the action item 1, the ends report, action item 2, the ends report about financial conditions, the donation letter from Heritage Automotive Group, which is number 4, the amended list of committees and meeting dates, the board meeting dates, the approval of the plaque format, and that's it.
Yep. Second?
Sure.
Sure, who? Put your hand
Bill.
up. Thank you. Sound like my kids. Anyway, any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody opposed? Thank you very much, everyone. That was lengthy but worthwhile, definitely. Reports to the board. The superintendent. Open your eyes now.
That's right. We are so happy to report that we are, I think, almost complete. We have one, maybe 2 left to hire. We had a final interview for the financial assistant,
Oh, wow.
and we are in negotiations with that person now. And we have a final interview for the agriculture teacher tomorrow. And after, hopefully we'll hire that right after break. We had a really strong pool for that position. We've made an agreement with Cynthia Michelle, who will come back and work with us in special education again next year on a contract basis. We were unsuccessful in finding a special education teacher as our mini districts, but we are thrilled that Cynthia's coming back. The only person that we have that we know right now is leaving the staff is Kelly Mills, who's retiring. And other than that, we are full. We are all hired up. So fingers crossed that our financial person, that works out, and that our first choice for ag works out, and we'll be done.
When do you think you'll
Sweet.
know who they are and when they're going to be?
For the next board meeting. We'll know after break, I
I was going to say,
suspect the week
after break, yeah. Thank you.
But it'll be an action item, hopefully in the next board meeting. The other 2 things on my report are just reminding the board that it's customary for the board to come to the celebration of learning, which is like our graduation, to support our students and their families. And should you be able, many times board members attend the outstanding student of the semester. And our culinary students do provide some sort of breakfast items for that. But the celebration of learning is a pretty big deal, so we're hopeful.
Do you know what the location's going to be this year? Anybody
It's
know?
at MUHS.
Okay.
In their auditorium.
And it's very well attended,
It's a great event.
you know, with parents and friends and family, and for a lot of them, it's one of the first times they've really been celebrated, I guess, in that respect. And I know for my family, it's much more important than their graduation was.
I showed up last like right at the last minute, and it was standing room only, and I
Yeah.
guess I'm not gonna go sit down, I'll go back to work. It was pretty great, it was really nice to see that the place was that well attended.
Well, and and I will add this fact, over the years that I've been doing this myself, is people love to know that you're on this board, and it really solidifies the voting piece later on when they go, oh, you're on that board? Oh, good. That confidence of knowing that the right people are sitting here and making decisions. And because they love the school. I don't think there's anybody that shows up at that. It's just like, oh, I had to be here, And it's just a nice way, and there's usually refreshments and things like that afterwards, which are gone within seconds. But and then you get a chance to see who the parents are that come here, and there's a lot of people that I think for me a couple of times would be very surprised to see and happy to know that students who you thought maybe were just at Mount Abe or just over here are coming here and supporting the school. So just give you that. Or if you need to recruit somebody to work for you, the pool is pretty big, and you get to see them on stage and you find out who they are.
And then the only other thing that I have, which isn't here, is I did send you in your email today. I'd had several board members ask for talking points, so you could just kind of have them handy when you were talking to either elected officials or community members or other people that you might know that could be influential in what's going on with CPE. So I combined a bunch of different details from several different emails that I'd sent so that you had that all in one place. So I'm hopeful that that's helpful for you, and if there are any questions that you have or anything else that you need to do with your work, please let me know that.
And thank you for adding the other technical schools, because I think we forget sometimes, where they are when somebody says, well, is there one in, central Vermont? If so, where they are. As I sit and look at these boundaries, and I had that conversation with somebody today about, well, why do they have to break the school? Why do they have to change them? And I indicated that we possibly could handle more students. Oh, there's a waiting list at Stafford. Oh, we didn't know that. Those types of things help that conversation, because they know things that Montpelier aren't necessarily coming out for them to hear. This stuff's, kudos to the labor, well, I want to say our representative that we have hired to go and, find out what's going on, because those reports have been just right on. If you had a chance to look at any of the film version on YouTube of those hearings, they do match up, which is kind of nice to see, like, oh, she got that too, And knowing that that's a good report, I think it's an important piece. And they seem to be moving along a little bit. I'm not sure if it's going to be done by June. But what do you think, Nicole?
That's my next item.
There you go.
Unless there's anything that, did you want to add anything for the business manager?
About recruitment?
No, I just have you under the
Business manager.
Oh, yeah, I mean, two of my three things to share have already been covered, the audit and recruitment. The next big project that we're working through is the fiscal year-end conversion of our software. This is a normal process in any given year to convert the books over and accrue payroll over the summer, that kind of stuff. This year's a bit unique given the conversion that happened last year, and we're still doing a lot of cleanup on an impartial or botched conversion from last summer. So long story short, there's a lot of work this time of year anyway, and we're doing a lot of cleanup on the accounts, the payroll accruals and that sort of thing. So as we move into closing out the school year, and that's a big project David and I are working on with our Tyler tech team. And we really hope this finance assistant works out, because we could use the support, having been a man down for many months now.
How's the training? You guys done with that, or?
Training's still ongoing,
Okay.
and we have access to a plethora of resources, either on demand or other tools we can access. And certainly with this new hire, there will be an onboarding and training part in that as well. Okay, back to you, Nicole.
I just had one other thing which I forgot to write here, that superintendent vacation. I will be gone on vacation next week. I'm taking Trey to the Everglades before they're gone. So that'll be really fun. Wendy will be here, Austin will be here, David will be here. So there'll be plenty of people to talk to if you have any concerns. I'll be taking pictures of alligators, crocodiles, whichever thing they come here. So,
Nicole?
Going to Egypt.
Yeah. Nicole, one thing on the talking points, we talked about it briefly during the presentation, Justice presentation, is a list of where our students are currently interning. I think that's another talking point when they say to me, okay, we're doing construction, where are they working, where can they go? I think it's a really helpful piece to have as a talking point, to have that list. So I get asked that a lot. And the other one that I get asked, that I know we have the information, it isn't something that needs to be done right away. Where are our alumni? You know, where are they, where are they working? I know, you know, each instructor has a group of people that they train and stay in contact with, and I know Lauren's been doing some highlights of different alumni, which have been helpful. Got some great feedback on the Facebook, Instagram, all of those pieces that people take a look at it. And the feedback for last week's senior meal was just like, the fish was great. I guess Woody was here too. They liked that because they hadn't seen him for a while. But are they still going to have those lunches next year?
That is to be determined. We certainly
Okay.
hope so.
Yeah, they've been asking me, the people that I know that attend, and I was like, wait a minute, you know, don't say no, you know, that kind of thing. And then obviously it depends on enrollment and those, you know, I tried to highlight that piece to get enough help and then so on, but they just absolutely love it and fight to get in here. I guess there's a waiting list.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it means a lot to them. Anyway, any questions for Nicole and her? Alrighty. Discussion up. The first one is the update on public education transformation, and Nicole has a little arrowed sheet for you to pull out of your packet.
So it's kind of funny because, you know, we just published this 4 days ago and a lot's changed.
Yeah.
This was what was current the day we warned this. So there's actually, I feel like a pretty good rundown from the Joint Fiscal Office about what's going on. The blue page, the second, where it says the enrollment at the technical programs, this will be updating. This is kind of a living document as we get students who apply here, but then as they go through their registration process at their sending school, we lose a lot of students during that process. We also pick some up. So this will look different as we move through the school year. Essentially, Wendy actually did this hard work. We compiled these numbers actually to show our legislators that we have space, whereas our neighbors to the north and the south are turning hundreds of kids away. We have space for them in a beautiful facility thanks to our voters. So I'm hopeful that something really good will come out of this and that less students will end up being turned away from CTE in this region of the state as a result of the education transformation. Whatever we end up like, I hope we have more kids that are able to access this and less kids get turned away elsewhere. That's the hope. The other piece here is a timeline. This was from the House Bill 454 before it passed, and certainly before Senate Ed is involved. So I don't know what this will look like next time we meet. This was what was proposed in the original bill. And then the last piece, the spreadsheet with the blue line at the top, this was also Wendy's very hard work. It was not easy to find all of these numbers. This was Wendy's work to figure out each of the CTE centers in the state of Vermont, which towns were associated with those, and then how many high school age students live in those towns to kind of figure out what the ability was to attract students in any given region given the boundary of the CTE center. And as you look through the list, you'll see that we have one of the smallest catchment areas for our center in the state. So those were just pieces that I've been using as I've been working with legislators, and I think it was really, it was a very important piece of work to do to really show the picture. Show the picture of both what the pain points are and also really kind of a gleam of hope that there is a way for more students to have more access to more CTE. And that can be a really good thing that can come out of all of this hard work that the legislature is doing. Related to that, Dan Rosignol wrote a great, I thought,
Wonderful
letter to the editor regarding CTE and how important CTE is. And so we included that here to kind of let you know that if you haven't seen it.
Nicole, I got a
Yes.
quick question. Thank you for everything you supplied. It took lots of time going through it, but it was well worth it. I was trying to figure out why they decided to choose the makeup of the governing board people-wise, because it didn't seem like there were a lot of educators. And at one point in time, I don't know if they changed it, they were talking about only retired superintendents, you know, that nobody who was actually working right now would be involved. And I didn't see anything about CTE. So it didn't sound right.
Yeah, the intent of the retired superintendents is because I think there's a concern that sitting superintendents would be more worried about their job than worried about the boundaries. I think that is ill-founded. Sitting in these meetings, I will tell you, to a person, superintendents are more concerned about kids than they are about their positions. People feel pretty strongly that they'll be fine, right? They'll find a job. But superintendents are very concerned about the funding structure and about the chaos that might ensue and just all the things that influence kids' access to public education. So I don't know if they'll come off of that position, but that was why they had retired superintendents. Many of the legislators have pointed out what you did, which is the board, the convening group of decision makers seems heavy on legislators and lighter on educators. That may, because that has been a comment often given, I'm wondering if there might be change in that as they move through the process too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I had one last question for you. It looked to me like what they were looking at going forward, because there's going to be a building process with new facilities, that the Department of Ed was hiring 3 people and putting aside $450 a year to do that. And I just, it didn't look right. It kind of looks like everything's being concentrated in one spot instead of about the state where it should be.
So to date, the Agency of Education have put requests forward totaling close to $5 million now of new positions that they're requesting to ensure the transition happens. I could not predict, honestly, could not predict how that's what's gonna happen with those requests. The construction, the whole piece of construction in the state of Vermont is incredibly complicated because it is so far overdue.
Isn't it like $100 million a year for the next 20 years, something like that?
Practically every school in Vermont needs construction at this point. It's been 50. I mean, we were just so fortunate that our voters did this, right? All of the other CTE centers are like we were before this renovation. And most schools are like that too, because there hasn't been, many states have like matching or something. The community has to put up half the money and then the state puts up half the money or something like that, so that you try not to get so far behind that you have a huge backlog of construction. The other piece obviously is if the idea is to eventually combine, maybe quickly combine school districts into buildings, then you need buildings big enough and modern enough to do that. And many places don't have that kind of infrastructure. So the construction is going to be a key pivoting point if this is all gonna work or not. But that's gonna be a whole lot of money. And challenging in the same way housing is challenging, right? Workers and permits and all of that goes with that. So they are putting, just today I sent you a couple of meeting minutes about some first steps toward that construction process. It's gonna take a lot of money though, and I think that's one of the pieces of skepticism from the field about this whole thing costing less money eventually. But even if they did nothing, still schools would need to be fixed, right? So construction is going to have to be part of Vermont's future as far as public education.
Liz has
Oh, Liz, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, don't be, I'm sorry, my internet isn't great, so if I can not
It's
use
okay.
video, that
We
would
know
be
what you
great.
look like, it's okay.
Okay. They, and I appreciate what you said at the end there, is that the construction is already so high. So as an example, in MAUSD, we just had a very thorough evaluation done. And the estimate, when you put together how they divided out level 1, 2, and 3, included accessibility and all of that, it was something like $70 million with the infrastructure that we have. So, and I would say capacity-wise, unless we're building new schools, Mount Abe has half the kids it used to have. So I feel like there is room in the schools, the existing schools, to take in students. What we don't have, and even Bristol Elementary had 500 kids when I went there. There's 240 now, and it has 2/3 of the elementary students in our district. So we wouldn't necessarily need new buildings. I hope they're thinking that way, possibly, maybe. And then, but the bills are so high that we simply can't invest in all of them, right? So hopefully investing in less, but you're right, either way, there are construction needs, and they are very expensive and difficult to get the people. So thank you for sharing your thinking around that.
The other thing that came out today too was the repurposing of some of these schools that are gonna close. You know, what are they gonna use them for? You know, and I don't know if you've had that discussion at your board level about Ripton.
No. It was like pulling teeth to get ripped in.
Right, and I understand that, but the conversation that came out today was the repurposing of what was another elementary school up in the Heroes that they're closing, that only had K and 1 in the whole building. I was like, what? But, and then the transportation challenge that they're gonna have with some of these things.
That was the other question I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like there's been any discussion about transportation and the cost of what the transportation
Right.
would be.
You're correct.
Go ahead, Steve.
So a couple of different points. One of the things that we asked for when they were coming around doing the studying was that the legislature take the lead about creating standards for closing schools, because doing it at the local community level is almost impossible. And so when the legislature comes in and says, you will have class sizes of 12 in kindergarten, and you will have schools that are 450 students, or you will be closed. That takes it out of the hands of local voters. It does not, if they want to get emotional about it, then they have to drive all the way to Montpelier and have their little protests up there, rather than protesting in front of people's houses. So the legislature has, well, the House anyway so far, has kind of taken that bull by the horns. But I had a couple of questions about some of the things that relate specifically to CTE. One of them is about the minimum class size and minimum school size. I didn't see any carve-outs in there for CTE centers.
They're both carved out.
Okay.
Yes.
And the second one is, anybody that's drawing these maps taken this list and said, here's the maps of the districts that we're making, and here's the CTEs where they're physically located, and making sure that there is coverage that way, because having them outside of one of those larger districts might be a little awkward.
That is exactly what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. And so some of the things that you pointed out in the legislation, everybody needs to remember, this is the House legislation. And the governor has already said he's not going to sign as is. So it's hard to say what's going to be coming down the road. But it looks like they've backed off on the timeline of having CTE done by the end of 2026.
I think so, and they also had originally, when we first launched, it very much looked like CTE was going to be first rather than second, because it was like more compact, maybe easier to deal with, but there was a lot of advocacy around, you cannot do CTE until you know what public ed's going to look like, and that was well received and people listened, so that was heartening. So it looks like they're going to, CTE is going to be discussed largely next session.
And around the same lines, the construction stuff, the feedback on that is that if you're going to design these districts, before you start carving them up and putting kids in these places, the construction piece has to be done, because you were saying about in Mount Abe district, But in ACSD, we would qualify for 2 elementary schools. We have 1 facility that can do that. In other words, we can't take all the rest of the rural students and put them in Cornwall because Cornwall's not big enough to hold all of them. And it's the biggest physical facility that we have. So we would, and Cornwall's one of our older buildings, so if that construction piece doesn't get done before they start moving students around, that will be a nightmare. And so we just saw this stuff about the new construction costs around the tariffs because we get a lot of lumber from Canada, and that's all end up in here. So there's a lot of moving pieces still, even though there were a lot of moving pieces before they put together 454. It ain't even, well, I guess the beginning is over, but the whole process is not over.
Yeah, it is true that when you talk to, we spend a lot of time talking to both legislators and lobbyists and other people who are very experienced with all of this, like our BPA executive director and our BSA executive director and school boards. And oftentimes, they pretty much can tell what's going to happen. But with this, I will tell you that nobody knows what's going to happen. Senate has it right now, and we will see what comes from that. And then the governor will weigh in. But I cannot tell you, I have no idea. I am heartened to know that CTE is not really in this mix, though. That will be a next year thing. So that gives us a little bit of time to wait and see where the cards fall.
Steve, did you have a question? You're stretching your arm. Okay. Anyway, anybody else that has a question? Thank you, Nicole, for working on this so diligently, and the lobbyist and, all those pieces. And Wendy.
Yes.
Wendy's the numbers guru. And this is really important because that was clearly one of the pieces that I always heard from Commerce or Education. They did not know how many schools for CT especially that were in the area and district-wide, who's the sending schools and so on. And that conversation I have with people around here, and well, why can't we get more students? Okay, well, this is the way it is now. And the waiting, pieces from Stafford and up in Burlington, and then how do you get those students here? That whole transportation issue that you alluded to, that nobody seems to be talking about that, which is really surprising. But
Well, we've got one kid from Otter Valley, and he has to get here by himself, right?
Right, if
Drives.
the current law is that if a student comes to us from someplace that's not one of our sending schools, then they can come, but they have to transport themselves.
Thank you for doing all this.
any questions about any of this?
Yes, I would say thank you for doing all this. I wish you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Because, it would be a lot better if you could focus on what's going on at Hannaford. I mean, it's necessary. We need your voice there, and, you're doing great work doing it. I just wish you didn't have to.
So she.
I
Yes,
just
we do thank
appreciate
you very
her,
much.
her
Yeah.
professional input.
Yes,
And
yeah, for sure.
the comments I'm getting from people is that Nicole has a national interest and national experience, and those are kind of different around Vermont. For her to come in and say, I did this in Washington State, or I did it in the islands, or wherever, but that's a good piece, and you seem to be well received, I think. That's the other piece, that sometimes they don't want to hear that, but, and they seem to be really, really interested in what's going on. I would like to make this work, so it was very collaborative. I think that was the part that was really nice to.
I've certainly, people listen with good questions and open ears. I don't know how it will all fall out, but there's certainly both House and Senate and Ways and Means and Economic, all of the people we're interacting with ask really good questions.
No other questions? Okay. Board retreat dates. Nicole and I talked about this briefly, so we'll just bring it up. And we haven't even really talked about what we want to talk about at the retreat, or what you feel you may need training on. Obviously, this government thing's an ongoing thing, and there'll be some subjects there as we move along, maybe not so much this year, but next year. But if you feel you need training, I will just say with VSBA, there's a lot of pieces that you can go on your own and train yourself, and they're not particularly, long, whether it's negotiations, or Steve and I have an opportunity to check in as chair people and vice chair people, and there's a lot of new people on there that really like to know, you know, how things work for you. The last couple ones, I've been the CTE voice, and they kind of go, oh, well, what do you guys do, you know, because our budget's set up a little bit different than some of these other schools. The funding pieces are different, and they're not supervisory. And they're really curious about some of those pieces. So it's a good opportunity. Some of those forums are open, but a lot of times they're recorded, and you just can go ahead and do them on your own. They do them at different times. Some are at night, some are noontime, but it's a resource, and it helps you. And as you know, when somebody asked about joining a board, I said it takes you 1 to 2 years really to kind of figure out what's going on, and providing there's no other excitement in Montpelier to change all that, which is different this year. Anyway, but just for feedback on that piece. Retreat, is this something you want to do in the summer? You want to do it in the fall? Any thoughts from anyone?
Late August?
Would it be at North Campus again? That's often seems to be where we.
Yeah, that's a good location. We just need to figure out when we want to do it and, you know, what we want to talk about. Steve?
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go first.
I would much rather have it in August, in that time frame, rather than the beginning, because I know a lot of people have already said, I'm not going to be here for the board meeting on the 19th. I'm not going to be in town. And I know a lot of people are in the school year that they take breaks. So my preference would be in late July, early August, before the August board meeting. So.
Traditionally, it's been a number of hours. Sometimes we brought in VSBA people who, you know, want to talk about, good meetings, bad meetings, how to recruit people to come to the board, which, you know, can be challenging sometimes. State law about meeting laws. I mean, there's a lot of subjects that, you know, you might be interested in hearing about. And they have a couple of really good presenters. We did that, I want to say, 2 years ago?
The
Yeah.
two ladies came and we
Two
talked
of them,
about
yeah.
open meeting law and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Very
and they were really good, former or current teachers. One is also a board member currently now, and she runs a couple of our meetings online. But thoughts on that? Any other time of year anybody's looking at? Bill?
I was just gonna say, should we keep a spot open for at least discussion for what happens if the feds don't come through with the money they're supposed to come through with?
Like I said, I think that's kind of an ongoing conversation, unfortunately. But that can be one subject that we can talk about when the time comes and what we need to do.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of dovetails with what Bill was. I'm sitting here going, the amount of time and when we do it might depend on the agenda.
Exactly.
And so we probably want to design the agenda before we start setting it up. I know that the time that we ended up, you know, almost floating away on our cart, there were a lot of new board members, and so one of the impetus there was to train new board members. But I look around the room and I go, I don't know that we need, you know, a whole session devoted to that at this point. So we can change our focus.
Right.
And I would like to, rather than say, let's commit to this many hours on this such a day, I would rather know what we're going to talk about before we start doing it.
It's a big year for that.
Well,
So-
can I just,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I know we've had, when we did the norms and goals and that
Right.
group, there was a lot of discussion about the board finally sitting down to develop our own goals as a board, for what we're how we see the future of this center. I mean, in Aston Northwest, our board has a whole set of goals that sort of try to coincide with our superintendent's goals, and then we use those for evaluation purposes for the school and the superintendent. So I don't know if we're in a place right now that,
It might be,
you know,
by then, you might have a little bit more.
especially with what's getting ready to happen,
Right.
and, you know, we might do bigger CTE or not, or, you know, having some set goals for this institution, you know, and it seems pretty important to me, but
And that would be a pretty significant agenda item.
it would be. I think
You know,
it would pretty
alone,
much be
just let you know.
the retreat. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Any ideas from anybody else?
just an idea.
Think about
Yeah,
it,
good.
you know. It was some additional training that you feel you wish you had, you know.
I'd back up that idea there.
Yeah.
The professional business sense, we have how to write a mission statement, vision statement, strategic plan.
Right, like, look at our
So
vision, look at our mission.
For business, that's important, and this is
Yeah.
our goals and aspirations
Yeah.
here. It's an
Exactly.
important topic.
Bill, did you want to say something?
My thought was just a little bit about, the really nice thing about the stuff that you, Nicole and Wendy put together is showing that we have excess capacity here. And it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship with the other folks around us now. And I'm hearing more out of Stafford that they don't see us as competition, which I think is kind of nice, but it would be great if we could figure out how to get their overflow. And I don't know if there's anything we can do to help about that, study anything.
So we have been in many conversations with Stafford, and we're very careful, right? Because we certainly do not want to be perceived or participate in any sort of trying to get kids to not go there.
Mhm.
What we want is kids that would otherwise not have CTE opportunity to be
Right.
able to come here. And we also trade kids that, like, we don't have cosmetology, so we send kids to theirs, and they send kids to our diesel program, that sort of thing. So there is collaboration there. We're ironing out what that looks like so that it is both transparent and friendly. We provided a flyer that listed the programs where we still have space, and they're working with the sending school counselors to try to help get the word out. So I think we're working pretty hard at that. And that's, Stafford's a little easier because many of the towns are actually closer to us.
Yeah.
The going north is a little bit harder because it's a little bit farther away, although Shelburne and Charlotte are doable. So there's that. And they also, 7,000-8,000 kids up there, right? It's a very big, the capacity is much different. They certainly can't serve that many kids in those centers. So,
Do we have any idea, I know I'm putting the cart before the horse, do we have any idea what programs in Stafford are oversold?
well, I will tell you that their number one is electrical and plumbing, which we were denied having by AOE. So we're going to try that again in this fall when we're allowed to ask again.
Did they give a reason why we weren't allowed?
We were told that you're only allowed to ask for one program a year.
If we get rid of a program, can we add another one?
One a year.
And we'll say, one a year.
Is that something that we could petition? Anybody could?
I haven't been able to locate that as an actual rule or law, but that is the case.
I think we know who it's coming from.
So we've already done all the work, right? So Wendy and Jillian as soon as we're able to in the fall, we'll put that application in again.
Okay.
And obviously, one of our data points will be how many kids are getting turned away from those programs, not just at Stafford, all over the state. Kids are very interested. It is a really, I think, cool and interesting thing to watch kids right now evaluating their futures in a way that was very different than when, we were evaluating our futures. They are asking good questions.
We couldn't look it up on the internet.
Well, they ask really good questions. They're paying attention to what industries are high wage and high demand. Some of our programs that are flagging in enrollment, and you talk to the kids, it's because they know they're not high wage or high demand, right? So kids are paying attention in a very different way. The trades are a much more real part of kids' calculation about their future now. And that's happening not just here, but all over the nation.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things I found really interesting at that open house. The fact that Casella and Amya were there talking to the 7th graders and telling them there are all these different jobs you could do. It's not about just driving a truck or breaking rocks. So.
Could we maybe
Sorry.
save the discussion? I mean, we seem to have gone a little
Right,
bit off of the.
That's because I was involved. That's usually the way it
agenda,
works.
so-
No, I think it's important that we vent kind of where, you happen to go to that particular program, and thank you for your feedback, because I did not go to that, and I wondered, and heard it was well received, but I think that's important, when you're talking to parents and moving that visitation down to the 8th grade. I had somebody today that said their daughter can't wait to do culinary, and she's in the 8th grade, and I was like, yes, that kind of visual, openness that did not happen in the past, especially, and I can say from Mount Abe, it did not happen. And there was a lot of obstructionary issues there in regards to CTE, what do we want to do that for? Anyway, and I'm sure there's other schools in the state that did the same thing. So it's just really, really nice to see that shifting. People wanted to come in here. I mentioned this before, I grew up on Cape Cod, and both the upper and lower techs are full and there's waiting lists. And the lower Cape Tech built a brand new school 2 years ago. There are so many students that need and want to go there. So it can happen, and it's always been like that from when those schools opened. And I grew up in the 70s, and we had a vocational school. And they saw so many students that wanted to go to it that they did these regional pieces. And transportation never seems to bother them. And they have sports teams. I mean, they have the whole gamut of what the high school experience is about traditionally. And I think, it can work. And, their institutions and the programs that they run, very similar to here, but again, some more the plumbing or marine technical and engineering pieces to, rebuild outboard motors and all those things for that particular area, which are important. It's a fishing area. Anyway. We can go on and on, but we had visitation from those schools during our accreditation when Dana was here, and it was nice to see that they're still chugging along and doing their thing and giving that kind of input to people like us up here who kind of need that. And with the legislature endorsing a lot of this stuff, and I will say the governor likes this type of education, and that's an important piece to get things to. And I think the more, Nicole, Wendy, everybody can educate the legislators about what's going on. I think I can see that key is a big, big piece here. Any other, I wrote down a couple of things. I think in May, you'll know when the retreat date is. I'm going to have a general idea, and I don't see any objection to the date or time of year, rather, that Steve's suggesting. Anybody not going to be around in July that you're aware of at this point? Except for Bill, who may not be back by then.
You're not getting the country.
I don't know yet.
Yeah, but you'll know probably by May or whatever. And I have to go away sometime.
Are you thinking of having it in July? Is that what you're?
Well, Steve mentioned the end of July or into August. School starts, I'm not sure what day.
August.
Yeah, August, I know. As a parent, yes, I know. August.
Our board meeting in August is on the 21st.
I was going to say that.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to get in before that board meeting.
Anyway, like I said, by May, we should know what we're gonna do. And if you can't come to one of those meetings, please let us know. And if not, I just can't say this enough. Check in on what you might have missed, what you need to know, get your packet or whatever you need to do, and, call and ask questions. Nobody here has a problem with, asking those types of things of, what are they talking about?
I've got one quick last question for Nicole. So from what I'm hearing, they're not separating CTE and regular education money yet, correct? It's going to be at least another year?
Correct.
So we have to compete for it for another year?
I don't know. It seems very likely that they will institute a foundation, very likely that we will be having a foundation formula. I could not tell you what year that would start.
Okay, thank you.
When you're thinking about when you decide the date for the retreat, just keep in mind that Field Days is not in August this year. Field Days is the last week of July.
Thank you.
Starts the 29th through
It's
the
going to
August
rain
2nd.
that whole week?
We can hope not.
Thank you for that one.
Why is it so early this year?
They had to change it in order to have the rides group come.
Oh, the moneymakers,
Yeah.
Because
Carnival group.
otherwise they wouldn't have come back this next year.
Wow.
Because Franklin, is it Franklin? One of the fairs up north
Yeah.
has ended.
Oh,
And
it
they
is
usually
Franklin.
go from that fair to our fair, so they don't want to go from a fair in New York.
Right, you come right over.
And have 2 weeks with nothing and then come back and forth. They
Nicely
asked
done.
if we could
I know,
move it,
but
and
it's like-
it was a week that was open in its fair schedule, so we just
Awesome.
moved it. We may be back in August next year, we don't know.
Are you on that group too?
I'm involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just say
Lives and
yes.
breathes.
Just say yes.
It's
Lives
it's
and
my
breathes.
life, yeah.
Yeah, by your life, right. Thank you, Linda. The public comments and commentary on any topic, we covered quite a bit in the last few minutes, and I'm okay with that.
I'll just
but
give
Mike,
one
go
cool
ahead.
thing. I tutor a kid at the high school, and he just got accepted into the welding program. So
Yes.
exciting.
Awesome. And my son has already given a request for pieces of equipment that is needed there. Anyway, he's like, make sure they buy that. I'm like, okay, yeah, Steve. Anyway, but can't say enough about that program. Board reflection. How are we doing? And Judd, you weren't here last time, and no one
Yeah,
answered that
of course.
question.
Oh, no. Yeah, I missed the last meeting.
Last meeting, they said they're saving it till you.
Oh, jeez, the pressure's on my
It's
head.
Especially when you wore that shirt.
I think it was a very productive meeting. I think we're almost on, well, no, we're pretty close to on schedule, a few minutes late, but really robust talking points. Steve, thanks for getting us back on track where we were going already into that meeting, and we're only trying to find the date, so thank you for bringing us back on track there, that's hard to do. Welcome, Laura, that's great to have more people on here and new folks, and look forward to being on the board with you. Super duper.
Nice job.
Especially the super duper part.
There we go.
Anyway, so thank you for that. So, meeting dates are there. You have everything else in your packet. Thank you, Shannon, for laminating all the new member
Meeting
information
dates,
lists.
meeting dates on this
Having
are
all this
different.
just
Excuse
laid
me?
out.
Meeting dates on this are different. We're saying Thursday, May 15th.
I think
The
is
next
the
board
other one
meeting.
26 for next year's?
Next year's, I think.
Is that what you're referring to, Bill?
The next meeting in May is May,
Oh, it's 26th.
15th.
Okay, okay,
15.
sorry.
You know, we just want to make sure you're really prepared.
We gotta go now.
Right on it, really, no
I
excuse.
have a question
Sure, go ahead.
about the laminated sheet. Liz and I don't have asterisks next to us indicating voting members. Is that just a typo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Checking.
You just got a star. It's just not gold. Anyway, thanks. Any other corrections? Take a look at it, because on occasion, there's something that we gave at an inappropriate moment and it was the wrong info. But anyway, thank you. I will now entertain a motion to go in executive session. Steve, would you read what the
I move that we enter executive session for the purpose of discussing evaluation of the superintendent under the provision of Title I, Section 313A3 of the Vermont State Statutes, evaluation of public officer or employee. That was a motion.
Second that.
They do the other one too, though.
Yeah,
No.
there is a second one.
No, that's not one of these. The findings, you're talking about the findings versus the...
Nope.
You have a,
If you look at the agenda, there's another
Oh,
one.
there's another,
Yeah.
there's another topic in here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And, that is a, yeah, okay.
That is an item.
Yeah, wait, so let me withdraw that motion. And I would first like to make a motion that we move to find that a premature general public knowledge regarding, this is about
labor
labor
relations.
relations contracts. Labor relations and agreements with employees that would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage because the board risks disclosing its negotiation strategy if the discussion of the labor contract was to take place in public. So that's the first motion.
And the second one?
I think you have to do the finding, I think you have to do it separately. Yeah, so,
Two separate motions for executive sessions.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, the second on this first one?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor of that first
Aye.
motion?
Aye.
Raise your hand, say aye. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Second motion.
Okay, so second motion, I move that we enter executive session for both the purpose of discussing the superintendent's evaluation under Title I, Section 313A1, and for the purpose of discussing labor relations and agreements with employees under this same Section 313A1.
Second.
Any questions from anybody? All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And I don't believe we need anybody to be here other than Nicole. I think we're all set with that.